Today on Doomed! Twitter's new deadnaming policy and how the internet's worst of the worst hate it. The ridiculous Google hearing this week. Plus, the 2020 Democratic primary is only 59 weeks away, people. All that and maybe even more. Today on Doomed, and joining us to talk about it all is Media Matters Editor-at-Large, Parker Molloy. Let me pull you up here, and 1 second, and everyone will be able to see the both of us in 3, 2, there we go.
All right. Hey, hi, hello. How are you?
Thank you for joining us, Parker. So, I have been meaning to actually have you on the show, and perfectly enough, you wrote this great article for the New York Times, basically talking about how Twitter's new policy, and this is shocking to me, Twitter's new policy is good. They did something good.
Yeah, it's very rare, So for anyone who's not familiar with what the change actually was, so Twitter made some updates. Like, they announced this a couple months ago that they were going to update their hateful conduct policy. And on there, it always said things like, you can't make direct threats at people, threats of physical violence, but things had to be specific to an individual, which kind of created problems, because you'd have people out there saying that they hated entire groups of people, or that entire groups of people were subhuman, which is kind of a large section of Twitter's user base, I think. So they made this new sort of policy where now it wasn't like just someone attacking you specifically based on one of their protected traits, which are the basics. You've got like age, gender, country of origin, race, religion, that sort of thing. But they did also specifically call out, they said this includes intentionally misgendering or deadnaming trans people. And deadnaming is to refer to a trans person by their old name on purpose as a way to antagonize. That's right. Like if someone holds a gun to your head and says, who won the gold medal in the decathlon at the 1976 Summer Olympics, you're not going to get kicked off Twitter for saying Bruce Jenner, because that's just factually accurate. But if you were like, I'm just going to keep replying to Caitlyn Jenner tweets by typing her old name constantly, and sending that, they'd be like, yeah, that's harassment, just stop and boot you from the service. So I tried to write an op-ed for the New York Times about it, which, I mean, I've been pitching the New York Times constantly. They published one thing of mine like 4.5 years ago, and then rejected 12 pitches in a row. So, so they picked this one up, which was cool. And I was really happy with how it turned out. They went with kind of a maybe not super accurate title on it, which, I know they were going for that rage click. This sounds too, this sounds like a contradiction. So the title of the piece is How Twitter's Ban on Deadnaming Promotes Free Speech, which obviously that's kind of that same, like, they're like, oh, that's Orwellian. It's like bombing for peace, or, fucking for virginity, that sort of thing. But that's, if reading through it, that's not like the argument that I'm making. I'm trying to just talk about getting beyond these basics, because anything that comes up regarding trans people almost always just turns into, a debate, a referendum on existence and legitimacy and all that, which is obnoxious, because I want to talk about these, when people are like, the trans debate. It's like, yeah, let's talk about various issues. But when most people think about that, they think like, yeah, let's talk about whether trans women are women. It's like, first off, just no, like, I'm not going to have that discussion. And second, it's just like, I'm not going to be convinced that I'm not legitimate, and I'm not going to convince someone like Ben Shapiro that he's wrong, because I feel like his own world would collapse in on itself if he had to admit that he was wrong about something. So I just want to get past that. So that was kind of the gist of my piece.
Right. It's pretty amazing that the same people who think Ben Shapiro is an intellectual deny the existence of transgender people. I mean,
right. And it just doesn't. It's mind-boggling. Like if you look at pretty much not all, but several of Shapiro's like popular YouTube videos are like, Ben Shapiro destroys liberal for asking question about trans person, or, and it's he does that same thing that everyone does. He's like, oh, so if I identify as a 45-year-old, does that make me 45? And it's like, no, that's different. If I say that what if I identify as a helicopter? It's like, no.
It's like I'm a helicopter one. That's what they love to go to, right? I mean, they
love to go to that one. They're like, how is that different? It's like, well, there are several very obvious reasons that's different. In that people are not helicopters, for one, but or they reference this like South Park episode from like 20 years ago. They're like, yeah, well, what if I say I'm a dolphin and I go to a doctor and I'm like, turn me into a dolphin? It's like,
the funny thing is, and maybe not on this specific issue, but on a lot of issues, the South Park guys have actually come out and admitted they were wrong.
Yeah. Well, didn't they just recently they had that Al Gore character,
right?
Like the Al Gore Man Bear Pig come back, where it's just like, no, Man Bear Pig was real all along and we were all wrong to mock you for it. And that sort of thing.
I believe they did that over multiple episodes too, because it's just weighing on them so much now.
Yeah, well, because I saw a clip. It was like, I think it was Al Gore, like behind the scenes at the Daily Show, and they asked him about it, and he was kind of like, yeah, it's neat, I guess, but at the same time, it kind of sucks. Like, it has to kind of suck to be on the right side of history when it's like, when you're correct about something that is horribly damaging,
right?
You don't want to, you can't really gloat. See, and that's going to be the downside to all of this stuff as the world's crumbling. You can't, like, the people who are saying climate change isn't real. If I then spend like an hour being like, oh, well, remember when you said that, they'll be like, we have other problems to work on,
Well, the unfortunate thing is actually that by the time there's like, even the people who don't believe in it, even people who don't believe it can no longer deny it. They'll be dead when we're at that point. So
I hope that if that's happening, like, we can come up with the technology to like Frankenstein them back to life, to be like, see, and then let them go again. Just like a very, very Pushing Daisies type of
just for that split existing moment, because we don't want them to stick around too long. No. We already got rid of them. And back to your point actually about pitching to the New York Times. See, the problem is you probably send them stuff and they go, oh, she's already on top of the alt-right, or she's not talking about the intellectual dark web. That's what they want to hear about. Unfortunately, you work at Media Matters. I do a lot of following the right wing stuff. Not all of us could be Michael Barbaro, whatever the hell his name is, and be like 5 years late on the whole rise of the right. I mean,
how we missed it. Who the hell is we?
Right. Yeah. Well, they actually changed it later to update it to how the police, the authorities, which means like, wow, nice to know the New York Times views themselves originally as the we. And
yeah, and with that, I mean, one thing that still shows how little they grasp that, where it's just like, oh, how did law enforcement not notice the rise of white supremacism? It's like, because there's a big overlap between law enforcement and white supremacists. Right. So,
they're not seeing it is literally like them getting like SS tattoo on their arm and looking the other way while they're receiving it.
Right? Yeah, and then be like, how did that get there?
I mean, that's really what it is. But let's go back to this policy, because it seems like it's a big policy change for Twitter, who, like you mentioned in your piece, notoriously is, I mean, obviously they were behind on this to begin with because, as you also mentioned, their original abuse policy was very vague. Mm-hmm. And so this is a big change, and it really should not affect that many people because, as you say, it's not someone who, accidentally uses the wrong pronoun or uses someone's wrong name without, purposely trying to make some sort of hateful point or whatever. So you have to really go out of your way to be an asshole, pretty much, and want to hurt somebody.
And yet, but some people really feel the need to be an asshole and want to hurt somebody.
Right. So who are some of these people who have already, gotten, I guess, suspended or some sort of action taken against them by Twitter because of this new policy?
Yeah. So I mean, one thing that is kind of sad and sort of expected is that Twitter still is not great at enforcing any of its policies. But one of the biggest names who's affected by this policy was this Canadian feminist named Megan Murphy. She runs this website that basically is like, I don't know, it's largely devoted to saying trans people are not legitimate, and then also saying that sex workers are bad. Like that kind of that's kind of her jam. Right. And
1950s feminism, I guess, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's very retro. But
who is that? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but who is that like that white supremacist lady who's like traditional wife or something like that?
Oh yeah.
She's like she's like that version on, I don't even want to say on the progressive side, but I guess that version of that, right? I mean,
it's so weird, but so basically, there's this woman. I think she had like 100,000 followers or something like that, which is a decent number of followers to have on Twitter, and building that up obviously takes time. So that was kind of an interesting thing to see happen, because what happened was she had been writing a thread where she was talking about a specific trans woman, and she was saying like this trans woman is not like, she just kept saying he and him and saying this is a man and that sort of thing. And so Twitter finally was just like, pulled the plug, because it's just like, you are focused on one specific individual, and you are just doing this, and this is clearly some sort of harassment, because when someone with a big following tweets about an individual, you're sending kind of all your fans or followers or whatever at them. And like, we both know this, like if you quote tweet someone and you're like, look at this jerk, like they're gonna get some people in their mentions,
right?
And I try to be mindful of that, because I've got like 140 something thousand followers on Twitter, so it's a very, with great power, great responsibility type of thing, except for not really great power, but just kind of the power to annoy people,
right?
So when
yes, Parker, I feel like I had to say your name there if you're going to quote the Spider-Man line.
And that's, Spider-Man being my favorite superhero, it all works out. But yeah, so basically, she got suspended, and like her account got totally shut down, and I don't think Twitter put it back up. But she's the only person I know who was like who had like a big following, who was like permanently.
Oh, she's permanently suspended.
That's what it said at the time, apparently. I like, she's not back on the site yet, or she's got a page that's just her website's page that she runs. Sort of like when they banned Alex Jones, but then he would just go and use the InfoWars page. Right.
Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. I'm surprised Twitter doesn't automatically just,
Yeah. So that happened, and now it's still like, I still have people calling me all sorts of names in my mentions constantly, and I report it, and Twitter does that thing where they're like, doesn't seem to be a problem, and same as it's always been, same as it's been with any sort of harassment. Every day I talk to people who have like their home addresses posted online, and Twitter will take 12 hours to review something,
Right.
and in all that time it just stays up and it gets retweeted around. Especially people who cover like white nationalism and the alt-right and all of these groups that people underestimate on
Right.
on Twitter.
Well,
And
who could have seen it coming? Certainly,
yeah,
certainly not possible at
we
all.
never saw it coming. But yeah, so Twitter's still kind of, Twitter's a mess, but at least I feel like it sends a message. It's like it it's hopeful, I guess, or
Right.
it sets a kind of, it sets a standard, which I
Right.
think is good and important, because
They
it's
noticed that their previous policy wasn't covering trans people, and
yeah,
they are basically admitting that they know that trans people are here on the website, and by, I guess, explicitly mentioning them in the policy, they're saying that they want trans people here, which is a
yeah,
good thing, right?
sure. And that's sort of the thing. I think what made the New York Times interested in this particular piece was that I pitched it saying that, one of the things that stops me from sometimes speaking up on issues is, okay, well, if I speak up, I'm just going to have people tweeting hateful anti-trans things at me all the time. So it in its own way would chill speech. It would kind of, leaving things as the Wild West would had a sort of chilling effect on speech. So I pitched that, and so that's, I think, how they kind of got the, like, why this new policy will promote free speech
Right.
sort of angle. But the core of this really gets down to, it really gets down to this basic sort of thing where it's like, okay, we may not agree on something, and I hate when people say agree to disagree, because it's so dumb. Like, most of the time, it's like, you can't just agree to disagree. Like, where
Right.
people are like, well, I respect your view on this, but
I
I
feel like
think
most people just say that when they're just like throwing their
yeah,
hands
they're
in the
like,
air
I'm
and
just
saying
done.
"fuck it." Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that there's a way to look at these things and kind of step past that initial roadblock, because who was it? I think it was, what's her name, Bethany Mandel, who, after Trump had the Twitter, or after Trump banned trans people from the military, she tweeted something that was like, this isn't just a play towards the base. There are a lot of Americans who are sick of having to call Caitlyn, Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn, or something like that. It was this one thing where it's just like, this has nothing to do with the policy, and that's kind of shows how anytime something will negatively affect trans people, people who don't like trans people will take that side, because they will go, well, see, you're not legitimate, so I side with this. But in a lot of cases, there's no upside for them to oppose something that's positive for trans people, or for them to take the side that would hurt trans people.
Right.
The story that came out in October, the New York Times put out, that report about the Trump administration sort of considering erasing trans people from federal law, basically. And while it was less about erasing or defining out of existence, or whatever sort of way they phrased that, it was more about just saying, like, stripping away legal protections, which is that's a big deal. And a lot of the protections that were sort of discussed there, and the way that a lot of those policies could end up going into effect and hurting people, it's doing it through Health and Human Services. If the Trump administration erases trans people, basically it just says that doctors can turn people like me away,
Right.
or insurance companies can choose not to cover certain issues. Like, for instance, because my health needs are not the same as, even if you take, like, transition related surgeries and stuff out of this, my health needs are not the same as your health needs, and my health needs are not the same as a cisgender woman's health needs either. It's sort of it's different, and like I will need screenings for breast cancer, but also I might need screenings for prostate issues, like that sort of thing, where it's just a lot of times insurance companies would create this like wall where if you're on one side of it, you get a certain set of services that they'll reimburse for it, and if you're on the other side of it, a different set of services, and there's really no upside to that, because it does make plans more expensive, because 99.5% of people don't have to go, use services from both sides of that. So that's what I really want to try to reframe these things into, not so much about, am I legitimate? Should I, how should society see me? That sort of thing, because that's culture war stuff that they want to talk about this. They want that to be, all they talk about. And anytime someone complains about identity politics, that's another thing I wrote about at Media Matters, is that there's a real obsession on the right with talking about how the left is obsessed with identity politics. But if you look at it, their focus is constantly, trying to tell you that things are scary and your personal identity is going to be changed, that sort of thing. You turn on Laura Ingraham any night and she's sitting there, she's just like, immigrants are going to replace you, that sort of thing. And it's supposed to make people feel scared and, scared for the future. And Tucker Carlson does the same thing. And Sean Hannity, well, he doesn't do that. All he does, Hannity and Lou Dobbs just mostly say how much they love Trump.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, that's their whole thing. It's pure identity politics.
Well, it's really all they have. I mean, when you really look at, why they do that, they don't have anything else. They're gonna sit there and go, hey, you poor elderly person on living literally off of only Social Security, we should cut that. What little you receive, we should cut that.
Yeah, it's like let's cut that, and trust me, it's good that I get a tax cut. Like that sort of thing, where they're like, you can't sell someone on the actual policies. You have to sell them fear, or you have to sell them telling them that they'll protect you from the horrible things coming. And, and that's, Trump started his campaign that way. And he continued it that way. So that's just kind of it's another thing where when people, seeing this coming out of the 2016 election, one of the things that I would see kind of pop up, not just on the right, but also like some people who were like who's that guy? Mark Lilla. He wrote an op-ed in the New York Times right after the election that was something like, liberals need to abandon identity politics, and basically saying like, if liberals only, give up the thing, stop talking about trans issues and stop talking about abortion, stop talking about, gay rights and stuff like that, or stop talking about race, we can get back to the things that matter to people. It's like, well, unless you're affected by any of those other issues, but also the question being posed there, the option there is less. It's not so much a question of whether or not.
For me,
whether or not like the left wants to pursue policies, it's whether or not the left should defend against like the rightward push on these policies. And when you say no, just let them take it, it's like then really what is the difference?
Right. Right. For me, when I see someone on the left or progressive, poo-pooing on identity politics, I'm like, no. Identity politics aren't a problem. What you're actually against, and I agree with this, and this is another discussion that we will actually have later when we talk about the Democratic primary stuff. You don't like when it's weaponized in bad faith. And I agree with that, but that's not the same as hating, like not wanting identity politics. If you fall into that trap, you're actually fighting the rights war.
yeah, exactly. You're fighting their war for them, because you're sending this message that it's like, no, we should just lay down and let them shove us to the right on that issue, or whatever. Because as much as people on the right. If you watch, any of those shows, Tucker Carlson especially. In 2018, I wrote in a piece recently. In 2018, he has mentioned the word transgender on more than 30 shows, which is an absurd number of shows. That's more than 10% of his shows for the whole year.
Right.
Whereas Rachel Maddow, who has the same time slot as him, has mentioned it on 6 episodes. Right. So
they talk
which side is more obsessed,
right. They talk about trans people more than trans people do. I mean,
the Federalist. Every day I get the Federalist email newsletter, and I open it, and their top stories, it's always something with trans people. It's why trans people are trying to their existence will hurt you, and whatever. And it's mind-boggling because it doesn't have anything to do with anything that affects anyone.
Right.
I mean,
I do love that whenever the Federalist tweets, there's at least one reply saying, "Hey, where do you get your funding from?"
That's the quickest way to get blocked by Sean, whatever his name is.
Oh, right.
He blocked me. Same thing with if you ever want to get blocked by Mike Huckabee, ask him about his son who killed a dog.
Dog, right? His 2 large sons.
He's very quick on the block with that one. When you're just like, hey, did your son murder a dog? And it's just like, oh, okay, I can't see his horrible jokes anymore. But one thing I always say when someone's talking about just identity politics or whatever, and they're like, we need to stop focusing on this and focusing on trans issues or focusing on this. And I always kind of say, I wish that the Democratic Party was as focused on trans issues as everyone seems to think they are.
Right.
But really, it's just it's sort of just asking the bare minimum, I mean, there was one trans speaker at the DNC, and that was cool. And she's her name's Sarah McBride. She's super, super smart, and she'll probably be in Congress one day, I bet. And people were like, "Oh, this is just identity politics, blah blah blah." But I mean, if you look at it, the number of speakers, it's okay, having one speaker out of it was something like 275 because she spoke in the middle of the day when no one was actually watching.
Right. Also, they sort of play into that too. The Democratic Party, when they book a trans speaker, it's check, we got our trans speaker.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is, it's still in the overall scheme of the population. It's okay, it's still trans people are still underrepresented, even when you went out of your way to find someone to be here's the token trans person to go talk about this thing. And I feel like that's kind of its own issue. It's the Democratic Party is not super jazzed, up around, about anything. I mean, any of the issues that we care about, it's always reluctant.
Pulling
but
teeth.
I would rather try to drag someone to the left than have to fight them off from crushing us from the right.
Right.
It's do I want to pull or do I want to have to push back?
Right.
That's the thing.
That's a really good way to put it. Yes, I like that.
Yeah. That's when someone's like, oh well, why does it matter? Why? I mean, I would personally, it would be much. I would prefer it if it was 4 years of yelling at Hillary Clinton to stop being so centrist, and trying to push her to the left, rather than being I hope the president doesn't just tweet out an executive order banning pants or something, something that's totally nuts.
Although that would be fun. I would be for the pants ban.
Yeah. Do not challenge that in court. Let it go.
No, but I'm really happy you brought up the trans rights issue that came up, because I feel like it's with the Trump administration because I feel like that was forever ago, and it really was just a few weeks ago. And the thing that actually I disagree with you about the culture war stuff. Again, I agree that's where we should focus, the actual policy implications. But I do think the culture war stuff is important because, and I talk about this a lot on this show, and that's the culture war stuff is what young people are paying attention to. And I really do think that, especially with like the YouTube generation, there's and on YouTube the right is winning that war. I've discussed that many times. We could talk about how funny it is that all these people are getting banned off Twitter, and and there's too much, and I don't really think Facebook is really a political place for the most part. People love just sharing funny pet videos and shit like that on Facebook, but on YouTube, man, you can't change one thing without, and it's crazy. Like,
search anything, and you within two like suggested videos, you get like why feminism is cancer. You're like, how the hell, or just something that ends up being like, oh, cool, it's just straight up like Nazi propaganda, Right. But yeah, YouTube's a mess.
Right. Like if this video pops up on YouTube and it's like, and without a doubt, there's gonna be a comment saying like, oh, fuck him and fuck her. Why are they on my feed? I want to watch more right wing shit, because this video is without a doubt gonna eventually pop up next to some right wing video.
Sure.
It's crazy. Like and so that's why I think the culture war stuff is important, because that's how young people are like feeding into this stuff. Like I remember during Gamergate, so many of these people were like, I'm a liberal or I'm a leftist. They consider themselves a liberal or leftist because they're for universal health care and they're for this or that, but they will not call you by the name you want to be called by. Yeah. Like the culture war stuff is, and to me, if you can't respect trans people, you can't call yourself progressive. Like, right. I'm not one of those people who think like, yeah, you could, if you're 90% of the stuff that I agree with, then you're progressive. Nah, there's some things that you can't call yourself progressive if you don't get on board with, and trans rights are one of them. Like,
yeah, it's like everyone should be treated equally, and that's all anyone's asking, and that's what's so frustrating when so much of this happens. And I think Twitter is a really weird place to have discussions about politics. People say, oh, you can't have nuance, and to an extent I agree, but I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. And I think that just thinking about, as you and I have kind of chatted about the talk about the Democratic primary is, we're inching towards it, has gotten kind of, we're seeing where the lack of nuance or the lack of willingness to read things in good faith and not assume the worst intentions out of people is going to make the next like year and a half hell.
Right. So I guess we should move into talking a little bit about this.
Sure.
Before we move on from because this is in the back of my head, I just thought of this. I keep thinking about how at the Kavanaugh hearing, a grown man was calling his childhood friend Squee in front of Congress. Like, if we're on board with calling our 40, 50, 60, I don't even know how old this guy probably is now, buddy, Squee still, then we could call trans people by the pronoun or the name they want to go by. Yeah. I mean, just basic human decency and respect. Come on.
I mean, as a society, we've gotten on board with calling a grown woman Lady Gaga in all contexts. That we accept that there's a man who goes around calling himself Meatloaf. I mean, like we've sort of it's kind of interesting when we really want to press that issue, and when people want to find excuses to not have to be decent people, I guess.
Right.
But yeah.
so let's talk about this primary stuff. Because, like I mentioned, we're actually, and this it's creeping up on us, only 59 weeks away from the Iowa caucuses or whatever it is. I think it's 59 weeks away. So, before you know it, it's here. But I actually think we were talking over DM over this last week, and I actually think it's a good thing that we're starting so early. Because, I mean, of course, I don't want to, I don't think it should be what we single-handedly focus on, because we still have 2 more years of Trump to deal with, and there's more pressing matters. But, when it comes up, I think it's fair game to talk about. And I I don't get what's going on, really. I mean, I think it's healthy to have these conversations, but people seem to be angry at each other for having these conversations.
Yeah.
It's like Liz Brunig put out this, what I think was a really fair piece about Beto O'Rourke. Mm-hmm. I don't think she could have been any nicer about it. And she's getting hammered by people for being a Bernie bro and attacking a progressive like Beto. And listen, do I want Beto to beat Ted Cruz or to run against Cornyn in Texas and become a senator, a U.S. senator in Texas? Absolutely. I think he's the guy to do it. Do I want him to be the next president? Not really.
It's like if push came to shove, sure,
right.
Like that's sort of situation where like right now, whenever people are like, oh, well, should so-and-so run? I think anyone who wants to run should run. I mean, who cares? People will weed themselves out. I think right now, so much of the talk is, oh, so-and-so should not run for president. I mean, honestly, if someone meets the qualifications and wants to run, they should. And right. I'm sure, I feel like it would become pretty clear, pretty apparent pretty quickly that, someone like Beto O'Rourke maybe that's not where he needs to be right now. I feel like it would kind of work its way through. But also, having more people in there isn't a bad thing.
Right. And
I think that one thing in 2016 was that, if you look at the Democratic primaries, you had, really you had Bernie, you had Hillary, and you had like Martin O'Malley, which, just kind of, listen, he was nothing,
If they were listening to this podcast right now, Lincoln Chafee and Jim Webb would cry because you forgot all about them.
Lincoln Chafee, metric system. I really do, appreciate that. I can get behind that, right. Switching to the metric system. But yeah.
And Jim Webb might be the first person to hint on a debate stage that he killed a man, which incredible. I mean, listen, I want to hear all sides. Maybe having a killer up there would be a good thing. Maybe it'll push someone to, I don't know, also kill someone. I don't know.
But there wasn't like this like driving. There weren't all these voices that were like forcing people to really stake out positions,
right?
And you saw that, and I thought that the attitude was fine and probably good. How the first like couple Democratic debates, there were like, hey, I am happy for any of us would be good choices. Like that's cool, that's fine, whatever. And I agree, compared to anyone who is running on the Republican side of things, of course, any of the ones on the Democratic side would have been better because they don't support any of the horrific policies that the others right. do. But, everyone kind of made fun of the fact that Republicans there were like 14, 15, 17 like people running when they had to have debates split up into two sort of stages. You had like the minor leagues and, the kids table and the adults, right. Where you'd have Lindsey Graham just really trying to right. get a moment in there.
And belated congrats to Carly Fiorina, who I think was the only person to make it from the kids table to the main stage. I think she might have been the only one.
and then when she got up there, she then did the weird thing where she repeated like a weird Planned Parenthood like conspiracy theory,
right?
Where she's
like,
a baby was alive and kicking on a table. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right, back to the kids table. Back to the kids table.
It's like, okay, that's former vice presidential candidate Carly right. Fiorina,
right.
Ted Cruz.
Right.
That was a fun little Hail Mary at the very last minute. He's just like, all right, come on up.
Didn't cause even make a blip, but it was brave play, I guess.
But yeah, but so having more voices, I don't think is a bad thing, and I think that the only downside is that debates might not, there might not be a lot of questions for each candidate, but I think that if, and this is a big if the political media actually does its job and really like focuses and tries to find out what the differences are between these candidates, that isn't just personality.
Yeah, you're asking a lot there.
I know. I'm asking a lot. They've got to take time out of their complaining about the White House Christmas party getting canceled. They were very heartbroken over that today.
A tear went down my eye, and then I realized I'm not invited to that thing, so I didn't care.
It's like don't go to parties with people you're supposed to cover. I mean,
listen, if I was president, I would permanently cancel it. How about that? Yeah. Cry now. You guys better wish I'm not president ever, journalists.
Now watch your coverage. You're just gonna you're never gonna win the primary now.
Yeah, I'm screwed. But even Avenatti, as much as what a waste of time and like joke that was, I'm pretty sure he's the only one who threw his hat in the ring when he listed like a list of things he stands for. I think he was the only one who said he would be he's for packing the courts or something like
which to be honest, I think it's like that's such a great idea, but at the same time, it's like shh, don't say that when like Republicans still had all the power.
Right.
Like, because if you're like, hey, if we get in power, we're gonna do this, they'd be like, fine, we'll do this.
Right. Like I'm a little disappointed he dropped out so early, just for the sole reason of he might be the only person to have that on his platform, and if he would have dropped that on a stage, some people who actually have a chance and could win would be forced to pick it up.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, and you did see this. You did see, Hillary Clinton did move to the left. Like she did pick up substantial portions of Bernie's platform, which was great. I mean, like that's what we should hope that people can move.
Right.
And I think that's.
But I also think
that's a good thing. That's not necessarily bad.
I also think people need to realize though, because there's certain areas of Twitter and Democrats that hate Bernie for not dropping out like 2 primary dates in or whatever. She would not have conceded on those issues if he did not take it as far as he took it. He needed to go to the convention. Just for the very small threat that in the back of the Hillary Clinton campaign's head, they were thinking, what if this guy doesn't support her? We need to make those concessions. Even if he never intended to, which I completely believe was the case, he never intended. Once he knew he was going to lose, he stayed in it just to push her. Obviously, he's not going to say that while he's running because then he would. But that's why he did it.
Please keep donating. I don't want to win.
Right. He needed the money to keep running the campaign, but the whole point of the campaign at that point was to push her. And
it was successful.
And it was very successful. And I wish people would understand that, but of course they're not going to. They're just gonna. And I just wish, like, I'm already. We're 59 weeks away. I'm already a Bernie person because I've yet to see anybody run on policy. Like literally every time someone throws their hat in the ring, it's always just these vague hope, change, stronger together. What does that mean? Give me a policy, and no one does that except for Bernie Sanders when we're looking at the people who are in the race for the Democratic primary right now.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who when they jump in, they don't have like a platform, what they really believe in. Like, I'm gonna have a hard time, getting on board with that. Like for instance, this year my cousin ran for Congress in Illinois, and he was running as a Democrat, and he ended up coming in second place in his primary. But when he first launched his campaign, he asked me if I could share some information about it on Twitter. And I was like, okay, but you don't have a page that says what you believe.
Right.
I was like, I don't know what any of your... And I told him, I was like, you need to have something like that, because I'm not just going to share it because you're related to me, Right. And he ended up losing, and the person who beat him in the primary ended up unseating the Republican who held the seat. It was Lauren Underwood was the woman who won the primary and won the seat.
Right.
But yeah, so that was
could have been your cousin if your cousin stood for something.
I know. It's funny. But no, she was a really, like, he came in second out of like 6 or 7 candidates, but it was a distant second. It was like 30 points behind. Like, she was the clear winner.
Right.
And but,
right. It's like how John Kasich, I guess, if you look at how long he stuck it out, came in third, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, and if you what was it in 2012? Roseanne Barr came in 6th place total in the general election because no one was still running in the general election, but she ended up on the ballot in some states.
Right.
So
yeah. And,
that
Beto went around Texas this past year, and he did some wonderful hope, change, everyone feel good together speeches. Which, if you're running against Ted Cruz for Texas for the Senate in Texas, if it works, fine. Mm-hmm. But I mean, for president, that's gonna be your platform. I'm gonna travel around Texas and ride a skateboard sometimes. Like, I listen. The guy's got all of them, every single person. Kamala, Gillibrand, Beto. I'm trying to think of who else is going to run. Booker. God, I hope it's not Booker. Biden. God, I hope it's not Biden. Warren. Warren's probably my second pick, even though she was much higher as a second pick to me before this whole Native American thing. Oh, my God. What was...
I came back up in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like
maybe you should have just let that,
Yeah.
First of all, never play their game. Never do that. Right there,
exactly.
she shows that she's ill qualified to run against Trump. I shouldn't use that term, ill qualified. Not the best prepared to run against Trump.
But the one thing she does that I think is great, which again kind of goes along with what you were saying, is that she runs on policy. Or she actually, she's very clear in what policy she supports. Right. And one thing I think is very interesting and very, very a positive thing about Gillibrand is, like, she's very clearly very receptive to the left.
Right. There's been no centrist, moderate, center right, whatever you want to classify her old politics as. There's been no one from that area who has moved more to the left than her.
Yeah, which I think is great. And the sad thing is, I think the one thing that might stop some people from voting for her, if she runs, is the fact that they're like, well, wait, a blonde lady who's the junior senator from New York, like that sort of. I feel like some people are going to be like, we tried that already, and which is not going to be. Like,
I actually think
people who are paying attention won't do that, but people who like, you have to think about how much of the country is like just totally not paying attention and will decide everything on just like, I think that I want to have a beer with that person,
You'd also be surprised how much she's lost with people not on the left, the centrist liberals and people like that. How many of those type of people she's lost because she spoke out against Al Franken. Right. They're killing her for it.
And that kind of amazes me because she wasn't alone in doing that.
Right, but I think she was one of the...
She was one of the first ones.
One of the first and one of the loudest voices, which honestly to me, I was like, that brought her up a notch in my book. I mean...
Yeah, that's bold. I mean, that... And, it's very clear that, like, the day that they all kind of... Because that happened, it was like the day where, like, she put out a statement and then, like, other senators, like, it was all, like, planned out to basically be like, we're a united kind of force, urging this to happen.
Right.
And, I think that, I think it was good. People say, oh, but now Al Franken's not in the Senate. It's like,
right.
Okay, that's
fine.
I mean, he was replaced by someone who has pretty similar views.
Yeah, I think people, because he was a comedian or he's a funny guy, people were really under the idea that Al Franken was some sort of progressive hero. He was really just a really generic, sort of actually centrist Democrat. He really wasn't that progressive.
Yeah, I mean, he was a very good speaker, public speaker,
right.
And I think that's important in itself, being able to communicate with people. But yeah, it's just kind of it's been weird seeing people really, like kind of like tie themselves in knots with that. And then I also saw after he retired, and Tina Smith was the person who was appointed to take his spot and ran for re-election this past November. When she was running, that Richard Painter guy, the one who was the Bush era ethics dude,
right, the never Trumper.
He was like, I'm going to run as a Democrat. And I saw people who were like, Al Franken is like, you need someone fighting on the left. And then they were like, I like this guy. And but you're just saying you need progressive ideas, but you're willing to just go with like a dude because you like his Twitter feed? That's scary.
That's honestly another thing I'm worried about. And we need like Trump has to be the wake up call that makes people realize that no, you can't just be anti-Trump, because everything that came before Trump brought us to this point. And listen, I've criticized Obama on many things. Altogether, though, I think history will look at Obama as probably one of the maybe top 5, even if not that, certainly top 10 presidents of all time. But even then, there's no way you can look at what Obama did, the neoliberal policy that Obama put forward, the Wall Street stuff, it's his foreign policy, how that stuff didn't push further to along with Bush, along with the aftermath of Bill Clinton, all this stuff boiled up together. From Reagan on, I would say, and got us to Trump.
And so it's like you have all these problems that were just like bubbling under the surface, and for large swaths of the population, not under the surface, it was openly hurting them in a bunch of ways. And then, we go and we put the worst possible person in to handle this situation, it's really shining a light on it. And I hope that people do take that as a wake up call. I worry that they won't.
Right. I really worry that they won't, because I really don't see a Booker or a Harris or a Biden, especially a Biden, not taking us backwards instead of forwards. I see a lot of people go, I wish we were back to when Obama was president. No, we can't have Obama back, because, a lot of the things that happened during the Obama administration are not what we should aspire to. Maybe they were just the temporary steps needed to get us there, like Obamacare. I think Obamacare is good as the temporary, it was better than what we had before, but it can't be where we aspire to stay. We can't go back to that. We need to continue forward. And I fear that anyone who isn't a complete shock to the system in a positive way, pushing leftist policy forward, I feel like that's going to just bring us back to that.
Yeah. Well, and I worry that whoever follows Trump is going to end up coming off like as some sort of hero. Because by comparison, it's like when you're swinging a baseball bat and you've got like the like weight on the end of it, and it seems all heavy, but then you take it off and you're like, this bat is super light, and you're swinging it around. It's going to be kind of like that. I feel like whoever ends up coming in after Trump is going to seem like some sort of hero, and I hope that people don't kind of get blinded by that, because it could be Mike Pence, and I guarantee there would be people who are Democrats who are like, well, see, this is good, at least it's not Trump.
Pence,
Pence, I still believe Pence would be worse, and I still believe that Ted Cruz would be just as bad. I mean, that Ted, God, it boggles. Like I'm just I'm shocked every time I look at what Ted Cruz's age is.
He's not old.
No, he is. Let's see, I'm pulling it up. Yeah, he's 47 years old.
Right.
He can run for president like 10 more times in his life, and he probably will.
Right. Yeah, and maybe with that beard now, he'll win.
Some people are really liking the beard. I still think it looks like he like accidentally got like glue on his face and fell face first into like a little like pile of pubes or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, when the beard first was growing, it looked like that. It's fleshed out a bit more, and I think it looks a little bit better. I think he actually looks better with the beard, and that's only because I think the less we can see. I actually think that most most men look better with beards, but that's just me. But
Maybe biased.
right. Well, the reason for my beard actually is because you're shocked at how old Ted Cruz is. If I shave this beard off, you would think I'm like 15 years old. That's the sole reason I have a beard. I need to at least look closer to my age. But getting back to what you said about people who think anyone but Trump is it would be better. The whole thing with Trump too is that people love to say that he's inexperienced, that's why he's so dangerous. No, that's the best thing about him. He can't get shit done because he doesn't know how to get shit done.
Yeah,
we should be lucky that he's inexperienced. We are lucky that he's inexperienced. Yeah. Because if he was an operator like Dick Cheney or someone like that who was able to get everything they wanted to get done when they were in power, we would be pretty screwed.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people wouldn't even know it, because that's the thing. It's not normal to have something where you're thinking about the president every single day, every day, because it's not normal to have a president who makes news every single day doing something completely ridiculous. Every morning he wakes up and he's tweeting like, "No crimes, I didn't do any crimes,"
right?
And it's just, what the hell is going on, man? And so. Which is totally something that normal, innocent people always do. It's like he's like someone in like an episode of like Law and Order SVU, where you're just like, yeah, it's that guy, even though he's not the first one they like go talk to. You're just like, no, I know it was the dude in the first 5 minutes, but
right,
but yeah, I 100% agree that if it was the Mike Pence administration, it would just be this, but like it would be so smooth. It would seem, I bet there are a lot of people who would just go, see, this is good. It would be the same sorts of policies, exact same sorts of policies, except for maybe even, almost certainly even further to the right, on social issues. Most people would be like, this is great. It's a return to normalcy. The adults are in the room, like that sort of thing. And it's...
Oh, there are people who say that about like the Bush administration looking back. And I'm like, what is like, okay, he gave Michelle Obama a piece of candy. Do you know that, I know we still got 2 years of Trump left, so this could still change. Did you know that more people died under George Bush than due to his wars and his policies than under Trump? Do you know George Bush's administration was without a doubt more dangerous and caused more long-term harm to the country and its people than Trump has? I mean, I think it's without a doubt, if this continues for the next 2 years, exactly how it's been going, the Bush administration will easily hold its crown as the worst presidential administration of all time. I mean, it's hands down easy.
Yeah,
and people don't think that.
They don't get it. They go, oh, but he, I never questioned whether he loved it. It's like, shut up. I never questioned whether he loved America. It's like, stop with this. Like, again, it's all just slogans and, bumper stickers, and that can't be how we have run the country.
Right. I don't care what's in a politician's heart. I just care about what they do. You could hate the country. If you could hate me personally, Mr. President, as long as you don't pass policy that hurts me, thumbs up. Let's do it. If you pass policy, listen. If Trump was to wake up tomorrow and be like, Medicare for all, I'm sorry, give me a bill, I'll sign it. I would. It would suck that he'd be the guy that would get the credit for it, but let's do it. I'm for it. Let's get it done.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And sort of the same thing where, how there are some people who are just like, I don't understand how some people can support Trump when they see his tweets. I mean, honestly, if you took a politician who pushed the policies that I believed in, and then they also would go and like have meltdowns on Twitter all day, every day, I'd be like, that's fine. I don't care.
Right.
I mean, because it should be the policy that matters. I mean, the tweets don't help. It's not a plus, but at the same time, it's not it's not even close to the worst thing about his presidency.
Right. I'm now picturing like Bernie Sanders tweeting every morning like, no crimes, no collusion.
Yeah, you know what, I think I need to, ahead of the primaries, I need to mute the phrase on Twitter, which I love doing this. I love just taking phrases and like anytime there's a Trump joke that comes out, you know, it was like smocking the other day. I was like, mute smocking, mute covfefe, mute dotard, you know, like mute drump, you know, that sort of thing. I need to mute the phrase Bernie Sanders isn't even a Democrat, you know.
Oh my God, right. It's
like,
right.
Like, well,
the outrage that would occur if Bernie Sanders ran as an independent. It would possibly be the worst thing that you've ever, but that's what they want him to do when they hear about him running in the primary. They're like, why doesn't Bernie start his own party and run as an independent or whatever? And it's like
that would be the worst.
Right. You should be happy that he's a smart guy who actually cares about the Democratic Party enough to not do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why anytime it's like, oh, well, they're, you know, will John Kasich run as an independent? I'm always just like, yes, please do it. Yeah. Please do it. You know, like siphon those votes away.
Right. Get those weird people who, I don't even know how to classify a Kasich voter. Someone who, I don't know, eats pizza with a fork. Because Trump's got the poor racists, but he's also got the incredibly rich stockbroker douchebags. It's a very interesting group that he's got in his little pocket there. People that usually wouldn't come together at a holiday party. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I see my theory on people who are never Trump is still that like I feel like 90% of them just thought that they'd seem like geniuses in hindsight. You know, when like Trump loses and they'd be like, see, I told you. And then they would get praise for being correct and rise to the top of whatever was left of a conservative media establishment, you know, sort of situation. But instead, they were totally wrong. And then mainstream outlets were like, we need you, never Trumpers, to be our columnists. And we need you to put on TV to pretend like being never Trump is the same thing as being moderate, which is not the case. Because you've got Ben Shapiro and Eric Erickson. And, you know, a lot of these people are super far right.
And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of these people actually go into the voting booth and end up voting for Trump anyway, both in 2016 and in 2020. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Never Trump is basically just a gimmick. It's a play to set yourself apart from every other Trumper because there's so many of them on CNN and Fox News to begin with. Yeah. So you gotta make a play that makes you seem like, you know, you once agreed with those people, but you sort of still do, but can't anymore because Trump is just so my eyes and
yeah.
How dare you, sir? How dare you say those things? Yeah.
They've got books to write. They've got money to make. You know, you've got Rick Wilson popping up and he says something witty that was clearly not just off the cuff. You know, it was clearly rehearsed, like all these sort of things, like his comebacks. But it's like then you think you're like, oh wait, that's the dude who helped make an ad comparing like a double amputee member of Congress to Osama bin Laden.
Right.
Like, oh shit.
Right.
You know, maybe he shouldn't be lifted up on a pedestal, but
I sort of think I sort of wonder sometimes how many of those never Trumpers and even those Republicans who don't like Trump, those few that speak out even though they vote with him all the time. How many of them have a dislike for him, not because of what he says or what he does, but because they didn't think of his whole shtick first, because it's a really easy thing to do what he's doing. I mean, obviously him being Donald Trump and having his whole life story and career helps propel that and put it even higher up on the scale. But you know, if John McCain in 2008, if Mitt Romney in 2012, if they just said it like it was, or whatever those MAGA people love about, whatever that terminology is they say they love about Trump so much. If they did that gimmick, would they be where Trump is now? Would they have become president? That's sort of what I feel like is in the back of their heads when they're hating on Trump.
I mean, possibly.
Some of them at least.
Although I do feel like it does take someone with the Donald Trump mythology built around him. This like idea of the what comes to mind when you think of a successful businessman, even though he's not a successful businessman. That sort of thing. I think that plays into it, where it's just like, well, sure, he's a jerk, but he's a successful jerk. It's sort of like when you see these, when you see the like younger kids trying to become the next Tommy Lahren or whatever, by that Kent State gun girl.
Right. She's been on this show, actually.
Really?
I had her on before she was Kent State gun girl, when she was girl who put together the Kent State diaper thing. And I had her on a day or two after she publicly trashed Turning Point USA. Yeah. And I was like, all right, this girl's definitely still a conservative, but if I could get just a minutia of insider information out of her, or just get someone who formerly was part of the group to publicly shit on Charlie Kirk on my podcast, I'd be extremely happy. And she gave me exactly that. So it was a win-win for me.
Well, I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise that she would publicly shit on the organization, given the diaper connection.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
The funny thing is, in that interview, I ended it with my final words to her were, I hope you learned your lesson. Don't fall for any more right-wing grifts. And she did listen to me, but I did not tell her to start her own right-wing grift. And that's where I needed to get more specific with that. That's what I needed to also say.
But that works where it's like, oh, you're conventionally attractive and you can kind of pull this off. But then you see like that James Damore guy who worked at Google and, got fired for writing a sexist memo, and then was like, I'm going to go out and be like a big conservative voice. And then he just kind of fizzled out. And then you've got that dude who got caught on video at Columbia.
Right? Yeah. He just joined Twitter today.
Yeah, he's on Twitter now, and he's already got like 15,000 followers, and he's already claiming that he's being silenced. It's like he's playing right into it, but it's not going to work out for him because he doesn't fit the mold. He is neither an attractive woman nor is he connected to a billionaire.
Right.
He doesn't have someone funneling money to him like Charlie Kirk does. Or presumably, I don't know. Maybe he does.
Although I can say though that the right wing grift is probably, if you have no sorts of, have no morals, have no sorts of beliefs whatsoever, and you somehow get called out or put in that situation for a moment of being an asshole and saying something horrible. Right, and you rightfully should be, like Damore and this kid. It's a really easy play actually to at least extract some money out of these people, because the left is not as gullible. You can't just with a click of your snap of your fingers make this same play and become an overnight socialist, an overnight progressive, and think you're gonna have some big famous moment in the spotlight. These guys, this kid's already he just joined Twitter today. He's already got almost 20,000 followers. He'll get a nice little payday. Like you said, he's not going to be the Kent State girl, but he'll certainly have his moment in the sun. And listen, time and time again, in my back of my mind, I'm like, God damn it, why am I an okay person? I wish I could join the right-wing grift and get some money out of it, because I could probably take off for a few years, actually, with that.
I think a lot about that. I think a lot about Milo Yiannopoulos' writing from like 2013. Like, have you ever read any of that stuff where he's like, where he's talking about how social media is turning us all into sociopaths or something?
Right, he was just like a tech dude before he became part of the right-wing
conservative views, but at the same time, it wasn't Milo. And I wrote all about that in one of my recent Media Matters pieces. It was something about the road to conservative media stardom is paved with outrage bait, where they just, you have Eric Erickson being like, helicopters, and like he wants people to get mad so they pay attention to him.
Right.
And same thing with Milo and, and Tommy Lahren and any of them. And I don't know. It's such a grift. And I feel like it's so obvious. It's so obvious that it's a grift.
Right.
And
today, Charlie Kirk
buy into it.
Right. Well, today Charlie Kirk tweeted out how he would donate $1,000 to get the wall built, and if 1,000 or I don't even know 10,000, I don't remember what the exact number was, but if 10,000 MAGA patriots got together and donated for the wall, we could get it built without the government or whatever. And A, that's funny in its own right, but B, there were people in the comments, and not just a few, a good amount of people who were saying, I can't afford it, but I'll give whatever I can to the wall. Or, well, first of all, it also looks a lot on Charlie Kirk and where his funding comes from, where he thinks that the generic MAGA patriot can afford to give $1,000 for this fucking wall. Yeah. Like,
well, they can use their extra $1.50 a week they got from the tax cut.
Right. But again, C now we're on, I think. What you just said, the people who he thinks could give $1,000, even though they can't afford it at all, are willing to give that $1.50 they can afford to the wall. And if you get 10,000 people to give you $1.50 a month for your little right wing grift, that's a good amount of money.
Yeah. Like I think about that. I'm like, I would, if I could get everyone who follows me on Twitter to subscribe to my Patreon for $1, I'd be all set.
Right. Right.
Like it's like $1 a month. Cool. I'd end up with like $1.5 million a year.
Right.
So sweet. But yeah, unfortunately, that is not the case.
Right.
Monetizing social media, very hard on the left.
It's
easier on the right, I think.
Absolutely.
Although the worst thing though is that then you have situations where it's like where Michael Cohen starts a GoFundMe and a bunch of liberals are like, here's $100,000.
Right. I was when I see that, I'm like, you could have put that money in my Patreon, and I could give you more wonderful interviews with Parker Molloy and the Kent State gun girl. We actually had a debate, and we got to a point where she basically just couldn't, after she gave me like 40 minutes of trash talk on Turning Point USA, I was like, all right, I can't have you on the show and not debate you on your beliefs just a little bit. And she was my guest and she's young, so I wouldn't say I pulled punches, but I definitely, laid it on her nicer than I would normally. And this is before she was Kent State gun girl too. Now, if she came on the show, she got way more followers than me. I'm coming if she's she's got it coming to her if she comes on the show again. But listen, I said to her, listen, like you keep saying how we shouldn't have these regulations and such, but at the same time she keeps bringing up her dad's business and how he treats all of his employees great or whatever. And I'm like, you realize other countries have literal, people employ literal children for pennies. And she's like, yeah, well, we don't do that here in America. And I'm like, yeah, we don't do that here in America anymore because of those regulations. And it's just like, it just boggled her mind. She didn't understand.
I mean, it's like Tommy Lahren with her, when she was just like, I'm on my parents' insurance. And you're just like,
right.
You're like, there's a reason for that.
Right. Oh, man. What happens when you're, well, for her, even when she's not on her parents' insurance anymore, she's set. I mean, she's fine.
Oh, yeah. Now she is. I think back and I think a lot about whether or not, because there's one very clear point where her profile took off, and it was after she was on The Daily Show. Before that, she was just doing her web series. Right. And she shows up on The Daily Show. She does that thing, and it's all controversial. And then she gets invited on The View, and then she says that she's like, oh, I'm pro-choice. And then she gets fired from The Blaze because of that. And Fox picks her up, of course. She gets a national interview on ABC News. I've gone through this whole thing in my head, several times over, and it's maddening. It's just like it's someone saw her and was like, "Ha! Look at her. She's yelling at Colin Kaepernick on the internet. Let's put her on here."
I'm not I think there's people who are against progressives, Democrats, people to the left of the center who don't who don't think you should have right wingers, even give them the time of day, and I disagree with that actually. In fact, I think I should probably the Kent State Gun Girl should not be the only right winger I have on this show. I should have more on the show actually. But when they come on this show, I think my audience knows that I'm not gonna let them get away with saying how we don't need regulation and that child labor laws wouldn't exist in this country. You should have them on this show to completely or on your show or your program or whatever, your website, whatever you got, because you should completely dismantle whatever they believe, even if you don't want to be a dick about it. You should take them on and trash what they believe, because at the end of the day, like that's gonna. They have a much bigger. I don't think people realize this. Right wingers on the internet, especially when video is involved, they have a huge platform, much bigger than anything you think you can give them. Dave Rubin, Mr. Classical Liberal, has so many people who view his videos, and he only has right wingers on his show. Doesn't give a liberal the time of day because he knows he's got the platform. I'll have Dave Rubin on this show. Bring his audience over to me. Let them see this. Let them see what I have to say. If I could siphon off just a single-digit percentage of them, that's a huge number of people. Yeah,
you'd be doing all right for yourself.
Right. But I wouldn't get that Coke money though that he gets. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that does kind of keep him afloat. But that's the thing. Like, we all just need startup money. We need money to help us get afloat, to start from there. It still kind of amazes me that Dave Rubin used to work for the Young Turks.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of people who just have no they that imaginary thing, that thing in the back of our mind where people like you and me just imagine what it would be like for the to join the right wing grift, but actually have morals and beliefs and a conscience. There are people who that sparks in the back of their head, and they don't have all that stuff, and they're that's a great fucking idea. I'm gonna do that shit.
And I got that. Well, there was a video today that was on Fox Nation, the video online thing that Fox has. I do think it's funny that they put Tomi Lahren behind a paywall.
Right.
But so she went and visited her old high school, and in this short video, she kept asking people, she's like, "You remember me back then? I still believe this stuff that I do right now, right?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, because she wanted to prove that she wasn't like that." And I think that that's so funny and sad at the same time, because it's just like people are trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, be like, maybe she's just a grifter, maybe she doesn't even believe in this super right wing stuff, and she's like, no, I've always been like this.
Right.
I haven't changed my mind since I was 15.
Speaking of Fox Nation, I'm thinking I should pitch them let me be the Combs to Tomi Lahren's Hannity. You need one of those shows on your internet platform. I mean, it's perfectly set up. The internet loves right wingers and people on the left debate. There's not enough of those. I'm gonna pitch them. Man.
But see, you've what they do love. They love having people who are on the left who are not good at debating.
Right. I could pretend I'm bad. I mean,
pretend to be bad.
I mean, listen, they got Combs because he looked like a scrawny, short, Jewish guy. Listen, I'm half Jewish. I'm not very tall. I'm only 5'4", 5'5". I'm Ben Shapiro height.
Right.
I could pretend for the I guess the casting that I'm not very good at this, and then they hire me, and I get on.
If you debate Ben, like he should take you up on that, because then it's like
I will debate Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro.
We can think
period.
that, like, it's like they're both 6 feet tall. That's
right.
That's our understanding.
Maybe I should pitch that to Ben Shapiro. Listen, I know you like to say you'll debate anyone, and when a leftist says they'll debate you, you usually ignore it. Maybe it's because when you're side by side, they tower above you. That won't happen if you debate me. We'll be exactly on the same level.
Yeah.
And listen, no one's calling me an intellectual. I've never been called that in my life, buddy. So
not a gladiator.
Right. So you got
the
that.
Cool Kids philosopher.
Parker, do you still have a few more minutes? Because I know I've held you for really long. Cool. And I really wanted to, because I saw you talking about it, and I think, it happened this week, and we were talking about Twitter earlier, and I think it's important to bring it up. It's not much time on it, but I think it's important to bring up the Google hearing. Yeah. And Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, went before Congress, and it was his first time before Congress. And listen, it was like most of these things are, it was a joke. But I actually, I put together this post for, I work at Mashable. I put together this post for Mashable, basically going over some of the more ridiculous moments of the hearing, basically where Congress utterly failed to understand technology, again, like they usually do. But it was I feel like this one was maybe the most ridiculous, between Steve King holding up an iPhone and saying, "Why is this happening to my iPhone?" And, Google's CEO having to point out, we don't make that product. And and we had my favorite was Louis Gohmert. I think this was the underrated one. This not going around as much as it should. He's mad that Google uses Wikipedia results in their search engine, their search results, because his staff has tried to edit his Wikipedia page before, and the Wikipedia editors don't let them. Which, to me, wow. I mean, this is a hearing which the conservatives of the House Judiciary Committee called because of, ostensibly, yes, it's anti-conservative bias, but in the big picture, the hearing is because of perceived political bias by Google. And here's a guy literally saying he's trying to partake in that on another platform, and getting angry that he cannot do that on another platform. Just incredible. I don't think people really caught on that, but
yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights. I did think that the Democratic representative who was like, why when I search idiot does Trump show up in the images?
Right.
That was kind of good, but at the same time it was just kind of like, what are you getting at? I don't right. Like I didn't know if she was in on it, but whatever the case was. Yeah, I mean the Google thing I think is interesting, and this kind of goes into that whole, this idea of political bias. I mean, Google knows that there's no political bias, but if the public thinks there is, Google will shift. They will create a pro-conservative bias. Right. Like that's what scares me, is that the right is so good at playing the refs. Right. They've done this for years, whether it's saying the liberal media, and so you end up with CNN hiring people like Rick Santorum or Jeffrey Lord, or I mean right now on CNN, if you turn it on, you might see Rick Santorum representing the right position and Kirsten Powers representing the left position. And she wrote a book that was, I forgot what it was called. It was something ridiculous. Like the title was, God. Okay, yeah. It was called The Silencing: How the Left is Killing Free Speech. Now, she's the one that you've got on this show. And the book only came out like 6 years ago.
Right.
So, like, how have we gotten to this point? And it's the fact that conservatives keep complaining, and they're going to keep complaining that Google is anti-conservative. They're going to keep complaining about Twitter being anti-conservative, Facebook. I mean, think about when Facebook in 2016. Remember, there was that Gizmodo article that quoted like one or two guys who were like curators on the trending topics feed, who were just like, they say that New York Times is more reputable than Drudge Report, which it's like Drudge Report shouldn't show up because it's an aggregator. I mean,
Right.
it's not an actual website. Like nothing's on.
Funny you bring that article up because the author of it, Michael Nunez, is my editor now, and we have discussed this time and time again, and he's gonna come on the show actually and talk about it because that was a whole. We could probably,
like I'm very interested in hearing.
And
that.
he's not a conservative. The point of that piece was not to do what the problem with that piece, and we discussed it, is that, and he's going to come on the show and go more into detail, but the headline didn't accurately portray what was going on.
Yeah,
and that was definitely a problem. And it's that article really did set forward this whole domino. It was a domino effect. Yeah. He knows.
Like, I mean, like that day, the Republicans put out like a press release that was like, "Stop the bias."
Right.
And then they met with like Eric Erickson and like all these people on the right, and then they got rid of the human curators and replaced it with an algorithm that was just flooding people's feeds with fake stories. And I think about that. I'm like, every once in a while, I think like, am I ever going to write something that's going to change history the way that might have?
Right.
Like, because if you think about it, it's like, had that headline been like different, like been like a little more like chill, laid back, maybe the election would have gone a different way. Like the election was so close that like any one tiny thing could have changed it. When people are like, oh, but if she would have went to Wisconsin, it's like, yeah, that could have changed it. Oh, if she would have done this, or oh, if whatever. Like there are so many tiny things, like any one of them could. But if Facebook hadn't been like flooding people with like totally false stories,
right?
I think about that. Right. But at the same time, it's like I don't think he was at fault.
Right. Right. That's one of the things, and to me another thing is, and this is one of the critiques I got actually for focusing on how much Congress failed. But I also mentioned this in my piece actually. There are real issues with these tech companies when they go before. When I hated when Mark Zuckerberg went before Congress, and people loved that line he said where it was like, Senator, we sell ads or something, and people were like, oh, what how hilarious, he's great, making fun of. No, there's no good side to this. Like, I'm mocking Congress not understanding the very basics of technology, because it's a joke that these guys are going to do anything meaningful to these very powerful tech companies who need something done. There should be regulation. And listen, when the Google CEO Pichai goes before Congress and says that there is currently no plans to launch a Chinese censorship-friendly search engine app in China, when he's playing semantics. Mm-hmm. When, yes, there were plans because they have built out the technology to do that very thing, but there currently are not plans because those plans got temporarily shelved because the news they were working on it came out. He's lying to Congress, and because they don't know what the hell they're talking about, right, they can't rebut him. And because of that, we won't get anything meaningful done. We won't get to get some real regulation on these very powerful tech companies. And whatever we do get will be some biased, ridiculous bullshit that ends up putting Breitbart and the Daily Caller on the top of everyone's newsfeed.
Yeah, which I mean, it took something like 90 minutes for anyone to mention that, like, Google noticed, like, the Google Plus had like a massive data breach,
right?
But then didn't tell anyone for 6 months. So it's like, how did that take so long to come up? That should have been like one of the first things that anyone mentioned. But instead, everyone's too worried, being like, why does an article come up that makes me look bad?
Right.
It's sad and obnoxious. And I used to be someone who I worked for this man named Eli Pariser. He co-founded
Move On, right?
He co-founded Upworthy, and he wrote this book called The Filter Bubble, and he coined the phrase the filter bubble.
Right.
And I used to kind of like be like, tisk tisk, I don't believe it, thinking about how personalization is bad and stuff like that. But then things, a few years passed, and I'm just like, oh no, this is the horrible future he warned everyone about,
right.
in his book about how, we could personalize ourselves into alternate realities, basically.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at. And and when someone claims, bias on a social network or something like that, it's they want to game the system. I mean, yes, Google has an algorithm that no one understands, and the fact that conservatives go into these like hearings, and it's not that the Democrats, most of them didn't know anything either.
Right.
They go in there and they act as though search engine optimization isn't its own like entire industry. Which is actually it's a field I worked in for a while. Same. Before I was
right.
Yeah. So it's like, no one knows what Google's the exact way to do it. And yes, every website, every company, every news outlet tries to optimize for what they think it is, but it's always changing, and it's hard. And of course Google can't come out and just be like, yes, this is how we do it exactly, because that would ruin the whole thing, because
right.
people would then just game it.
Right. I also the idea that they assume that, I think Lamar Smith was the one who said, like, he brought up how the people could, Google employees could change where these things show up. And Pichai says how, no, that's not possible with the algorithm. The algorithm picks or whatever. And Lamar Smith says, I don't believe that's true. Well, Lamar Smith is wrong, because no, individual employees can't just decide where something shows up on the Google search. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people are also brushing aside the idea that people created the algorithm.
Yeah.
So this is not what Lamar Smith meant. He thinks people are just deciding, like, I'm a leftist, so I will put Media Matters on top for this search term.
Yeah, it's like an old school like switchboard where you've got someone like plugging in results.
Yeah, that 100% is not happening. But at the same time, for many of the issues with where the algorithm is a problem, human beings created the algorithm. They could come up with a new improved algorithm to fix those issues. And there are probably some areas where no, an algorithm can't do the job of real human beings. And that's another thing. And I just remembered another telling moment from that hearing when the Republican, can't remember his first name, Chabot, however you say it, mentioned how when he searched the GOP's Obamacare repeal and replace plan last year,
it was unpopular,
and all the search results came up saying how much it sucked. And he was like, I had to go like 10 pages in to find one positive article. And how like there's just no moment of just like self-reflection where it's like, maybe it just wasn't popular. No, it was.
Nope. Had to be. I mean, it's the same thing that comes up when people are like, well, like 90% of Trump stories are negative. It's like, well, maybe because he's a train wreck of a human being.
Right.
I mean,
right. Oh, man. That's just so much. Too much.
Yeah. I tried to explain like some of this stuff to my dad last time I was home, and it all went over his head.
Right.
And I think that's sadly, it's like, it's hard to explain to someone who, I mean, I think like, we grew up in this age with, where everyone was getting on computers, everyone was getting online, it wasn't this like, oh, hey, you're 50 and now the internet's a thing, like that sort of thing thrown at people. So it's going to be tricky, but yeah, it'd be nice if we actually had people in Congress who understood the issues enough to actually push back when someone is lying or sidestepping, or at very least focus on something other than bias. So yeah, that would be ideal.
Right. Well, hopefully the new younger Congress has some. They're younger, so they're at least going to be more tech savvy than the people before them. But hopefully, we get something out of. I mean, they're great. A lot of those people coming in are really great on a lot of things. So hopefully we get some good stuff on the tech front too. Parker Molloy, thank you so much for well beyond you an hour and a half here. Thank you so much for sticking around. Would love to have you on again. This was fantastic. Sure. She's the editor at large for Media Matters, folks. At Parker Molloy on Twitter, not Peter Parker, Molly, or whatever people mistaken her name for. It's at Parker Molloy. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right, everybody. I'm going to go to the comments here on the YouTube stream. And we are well over the time we usually go. So I'm going to go really quick through some of these comments. I did not have... There was not... Oh, wait, first, support this show by subscribing on YouTube. Doomed.tv. Will take you to the YouTube channel, and you could just click that subscribe button. I believe once I hit like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I'm a little bit behind on YouTube, on my personal channel where I started doing the Doom stream. I believe when I hit 1,000 subscribers, which we're close to, I could apply for monetization because I think I'm there with the views, which would be helpful. I would not make a ton of money, but every buck here and there counts. But we did lose a few people on Patreon recently due to financial issues. And again, I want to stress, if you cannot afford to monetarily support this show, do not do it. I do not want anyone to go broke. I'm not Charlie Kirk here trying to get the wall built. Please, if you have disposable income and you would like to use that disposable income on making sure this show, which hopefully you find entertaining or informative, hopefully both, allow it to continue and expand, then do it at patreon.com/MattBinder. I ask for $5. You can give less. You can give more. What I'm going to do, I've been teasing you guys extra material for months now. Once we hit the goal. We are nowhere close to that goal. We've fallen further. Well, not nowhere close, but we've not gotten closer. We've fallen further back. It happens. I'm a terrible self-promoter. You all know that. I rarely even tell people. I bet 99% of the people who listen to this show on the podcast, which is way more than watch the YouTube, don't even know about the Patreon, even though they listen to the show. Because I suck at name dropping it. The first time you're hearing about it is an hour and 40 minutes into the program. Wonderful, right? Like maybe even half of the people who subscribe to the Patreon don't even realize it's a Patreon. But in the new year, there will be more than one Doom Show a week. Whether it means I do 5, 6 a month scattered somehow, or whether it means there's actually 1 or 2 a week, followed by a week with 1 or 2. I don't know how it's going to be. Like I say, there's not usually a set date. It's whenever a guest I'd like to have on has an availability. That's when I do the show. It's usually once a week, though, at least. But I'm going to try to make it more very soon. And in the new year, we will definitely be doing more content. All right. All that out of the way. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please leave a review on iTunes. It is very helpful. Very, very helpful. A written review especially. Helps us get a boost in the rankings. And with that said, let's go to the comments on YouTube. Going to spend like 10 minutes max here. Theo, what's good, Doomies? Renee went with Doom Lords, by the way. I don't know about that one. I think Doomies is better. Ryan Tennant, hell yeah, Parker Molloy. Absolutely. She was fantastic. I'm so happy that she came on the show, A. And then B, I am already looking forward to having her back on the show. Could run the gamut with her on all sorts of topics. Renee, got to get Jake Flores on, Matt. Email me that, and I will. That's a good reminder. Kennedy says hello. Renee, hola. Also mentioned Dark Greedy Matt to Hassan and Ali. What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. You mentioned me to Hassan and what? Huh? Hashtag Dark Gritty Matt. Is that a thing? I'm Dark Gritty Matt. I have no idea what that even means. Renee, Twitter has to ban Jose Antonio Cast, Pinochista Pepe Extraordinaire. Kennedy says, Renee says it's a Chilean politician. Kennedy says, smash that fucking report button, folks. Renee says, like calling Michael Jamal. Right. Theo says, tweet. I don't know what that means. Misha with a little birdie icon. Louis, if you identify as an inanimate object, then you are schizophrenic and need medical help. LOL. Absolutely. Misha Romo says, I like helicopters. Yes, but you are not a helicopter, for sure. If you want to identify as a brony, fair play, says Renee. Only consenting bronies. No idea what he's talking about. I know what a brony is, but... let's see... Theo says, I don't give a fuck if you want to identify as a helicopter. Knock yourself out. Right. How does it affect me? Theo says, right. Just respect other people who want to actually, who are not joking and are really just trying to be who they are. Yes. Renee says, please, no helicopters. Misha, okay, we got a lot of helicopter talk here. That's not really the point of us talking about the helicopter thing during the discussion with Parker, guys. Come on. Now we're talking Pinochet. Oh my God, what's going on here? Yes, we are aware of the fascist implication of helicopters, Renee. And Misha's talking about what a wonderful time riding on helicopters is. Yes. Okay. All right. There's our new cat on my lap. If you want to say hi. He does not have a name yet. Said she because I still think of my other cat, Milkshake, sometimes, who you guys know. We lost, earlier this year in September. But this is, he does not have a name yet. This is, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see him. This is Kitty, we call him right now. We're still thinking of a name. Very different from our other cat. Our other cat was very not cat-like. She never went up on anything, always stayed down, didn't jump up on things really. Like to go under things, not really stay on top of things. Was really not cat-like in terms of getting into trouble. This cat, not so much. Already finding himself inside the tree, the Christmas tree that we have here. Kennedy says, drop me from a helicopter, I'll bounce. All right, I'm going to scroll past this helicopter stuff. Misha says, my love of helicopters started in childhood. Oh, man. Theo says, if you have to get murdered, helicopter is a metal way to go. Kenny says, yeah, give me a story to tell in the afterlife. Oh, my God, guys. Now they're talking about being killed by lions. What is going on here in the chat? That's YouTube for you. Oh God, what are you guys doing to me? Are you for real here? Come on. Kennedy, identity is everything in politics. That's why AOC means so much to so many people already. Absolutely right. That's what we were talking about. Yes. Identity politics is a part of, if you're progressive, identity politics should matter to you. Theo, I forgot about this. Theo in the Discord earlier, in the TMBS Discord, when I mentioned Parker was coming on the show, went, hell yeah, getting some Soros money for this show. Because she works for Media Matters. Media Matters always, even during, always been pretty good at not getting involved in the Democratic infighting. I don't think Media Matters ever really, I know their overarching organization and who they are and how they get involved. Yes. But Media Matters in and of itself sticks to going at the right and monitoring the right. And I would say most that the entire organization, the most left of people in that organization work for Media Matters, I would say, for sure. A lot of good people at Media Matters. Parker is definitely one of them, obviously. Let's go back to the comments here. Kennedy, yeah, it always bothers me when people gripe at leftists that aren't well read enough or able to express their ideas eloquently. Renee says, like pseudo-anarchists who gatekeep and classists. Aaron Fenwick, FYI, PewDiePie's vid is next up on YouTube, LOL, right? Perfect. That is perfect for what we were talking about earlier with Parker. Really fantastic. It says it all. And PewDiePie, I mean, yes, he's so big on YouTube, but and it's not because of his leanings, totally. But yes, there's certainly an issue there. Theo says, cannot recommend liberal usage of the I'm not interested button enough. No idea what he's talking about there. YouTube keeps recommending shoe on head, and it's annoying. Like, no, stop. I don't know what I did to deserve that. Yeah, shoe on head is pretty... Yeah, that's bad. Although I should get her on this show, if she would want to get on the show. The Norwegian 76, Meatloaf is more than a man. Meatloaf is a star. Theo, I don't care. PewDiePie is still a dumb name, but so is Meatloaf, right? Diener Hawking's Reptilian Hunter. You can ask, and in most cases, common human decency and respect will prevail, but you can't force, shame, or bully people into doing it. It just seems to cause more harm than good. Are you talking about, like, asking people to use the proper pronouns if you're transgender? Because, I mean, yeah, you can't force, shame, or bully people into doing it, but, you know, that doesn't mean that they're not assholes, and that, a company like Twitter can't say, if you don't do that, at the very least, you can't not do that here on this platform. The Norwegian says, Meatloaf is fitting, though, because he's a hunk of man meat, right? Because we brought up, Parker brought up Meatloaf, I believe, right? Yeah. Okay, I know where this is going. You guys get sidetracked on everything. Jeez. Brett, the way PewDiePie pronounces his name is also stupid, but it makes sense because his audience is so young. How does he pronounce it? I don't even remember. I watch him every now and then, but I can't even, it doesn't stay in my head whatsoever. It also makes sense because he's Swedish, says the Norwegian. Hint is an understatement, says Theo. Diener says, people happily outing themselves as bullies. What is going on? Let's see. Renee says, PewDiePie identifies as a closet Lebensborn. I have no idea what you're talking about. Or if PewDiePie actually has said that, or if you're just making a joke. God. Promoting tolerance means being intolerant to intolerance, says Theo. Yes, it's tricky but vital. Absolutely. War is bullying people, says Renee. Right. Kennedy says, I'm seriously messed up about the guy using Steven Universe to push Nazi bullshit. That seems so perverse to me. Right. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Who does that? PewDiePie? But I agree if that's what's going on. Winston, I think one of the biggest problems is with the ideal of being rich as presented in mass media. In many presentations, this ideal presents people as evil trying to steal your money. Like Goebbels, or as Jack Posiebek says, Goebbels, did with Jews in Nazi Germany. Kennedy says, it's funny to bully transphobes, not funny to bully trans people. Super important distinction. Theo, tolerating intolerance only breeds intolerance. It cannot go the other way. Brett, yeah, but I actually support taking from the rich to give to the poor. Kennedy says, Bernie, 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 when we're talking about Bernie. Yes. Diener, get rid of the idea of hate speech laws. Speech that incites violence, I agree, is legitimate, but hate speech is too vague a term, and you'll always be stuck with the problem, who decides what's hate. Yeah, I agree on that to some level. There's not really hate speech laws, though, in this country. I mean, the KKK is allowed to say what they say. and march and do all that. The hate speech laws aren't really laws. They're usually hate speech policy on private platforms like Twitter or Facebook, and they have absolutely every right to do that. They are like a public space because of how people use them, but they are not a public space because they are not the public. They are not publicly owned. You can own people publicly on those platforms, but it's not publicly owned. I do that all the time. Renee, the idea is that your freedom ends at your nose, Diener. Fucking with other people crosses that. Yes, absolutely. Winston, I wanted more policy, Beto. There's no policy. In fact, when there's a number of his votes that are very problematic. Brett, it's weird when you look at your ballot guide and there's some unknown running that has nothing to say about their positions. That's a guaranteed loss. Yes, and you should also question why they aren't coming out with any sort of positions. Where do they actually stand? Renee says, Cynthia Nixon, President Princess Peach. We don't have to say that stuff, but yes, Cynthia Nixon is fantastic. Big fan. And you should all know that because I worked for her when she was running. Theo, but even beyond that, I will call out and shame, bully exactly everyone who questions my friend's existence or validity because I am intolerant to intolerance, right? Renee disagrees with Gritty Matt, just used the native blood to kick Trudeau and Trump in the pipeline, talking about the Elizabeth Warren Native American thing. Diener says, meant to say speech that incites violence is hateful speech, and we already have laws to deal with this. Kennedy, I will do everything in my power to make transphobes feel bad about being transphobic, right? Renee says, Matt looks like a dark gritty. Debate Misha Roma. Where's this coming from, dark gritty? Theo, I'm quite glad that Twitter has made it a bannable offense. Dead naming you're talking about, because it literally gets people killed, for fuck's sake, right? Kennedy, Malinopolis tried to read a list of names of undocumented immigrants to a room of angry white supremacists. That implies threat of violence, right? Right. Theo says twitter.gov. Diener, keep speech free. It's not because it's great, far from it, but every other alternative is way worse. Right. Say what you will about Fox News, says Brett. Following Obama's election, their propaganda machine has been quite effective, right? I'm going to skip forward some of this stuff about speech because we really need to get through this. Kennedy, Ted Cruz has such a bad face. Brett, Matt is actually a 17-year-old. This is all part of a senior project. That's correct. You guys have pulled the rug from under me. Theo, he was on Majority Report in 7th grade. 6th, actually, but right. Renee, we need to dye a gritty doll and call it Matt. Do it, please. Winston, Parker for Prez. I would be for that. Cruz is like a blobfish, says Kennedy. Diener, I think the people in this discussion are smart enough and there's hope. I just think censorship of speech has always proven to be a bad policy. Theo says, how did you get out of your locker? Kennedy, why does Matt's Bernie sound like Dracula? What are you talking about? It's huge, I say, huge! Medicare for all! I cannot do it alone! Theo Dillon, sounds like eugenics, Diener. I wouldn't go that far. Kennedy, Kasich is so gross. Renee says, like the mooch. That's what we're talking about there. Brett says those animatronic figures, which animatronic figures, have been creeping me out since I was a kid at Chuck E. Cheese. Theo says, can't wait for Donald Trump Day. All right, let me keep going here through these comments. We have some infighting in the chat. Brian Arguello, let the Grift Olympics begin, LOL, right? We should call it that. That should be the segment where I go through the latest right-wing grift. the Grift Olympics. Who's competing today? It's a good idea. Theo says, "Oh my God, hundreds of people were like, I'm in. I got 10K on it," talking about the Charlie Kirk tweet about donating for the wall, crowdsourcing the wall. Ryan, Charlie Kirk thinks all his MAGA chud followers also live in their parents' basement rent-free and have 100% disposable income and are funded by dark Republican rich money. The Norwegian, Kirk probably just writes off the $1,000 as a business expense to his Coke funders, right? Theo, most seem more interested in the $100 price point, though. People should donate $100 to me. Renee, again, calling me dark gritty. What is this? Theo goes, Matt is Lil, talking about my height. Yes, I've always been short. Theo says, man, a few years ago, I would have sworn Matt was definitely taller than Sam. Where did that come from? I remember during the Gamergate years, one of the many drawings meant to make fun of me, which all failed because they somehow made me look accurate and very good for the most part. One of those drawings made me very tall and lanky. And I was like, why? Where's this understanding that I'm tall? I've never been mistaken for being tall. I don't think, even if you've never seen me stand up, I don't think like how I look just like from the chest up or the waist up makes me look like I'm a tall individual at all. Weird. But I'll take it, man. If you guys don't know, then fine. Kennedy, oh my God, I'm almost as tall as Ben. Cart Offel Salat, a plan is forming, talking about the Griffs. Brett Reed, Steve King treating the CEO of Google like the office IT guy was something else. Right. Theo nationalized a lot of them. We're talking about the tech companies now. Right. They were now debating the pronunciation of Shabbat in the chat. Fabulous, guys. Fabulous. Real entertaining stuff. Misha, she's also taking part in that. So I'll continue past the debate over how to say Shabbat or Shabbat or Shabbat or Shabbat. Renee says, get Parker to read the comments. I will spare her that. I'm glad I did. Misha, freeze Peach. Theo says, handcuff yourself to Twitter's door. Sean Zone, more doomed. Get your show. Great show, Matt. Thank you. IFC forever. Again, that's my band that Sean Zone is now the number one fan of, who also has not ever heard a song. I need to get him some tracks for sure. Winston, thank you for having Parker on. She is great. My pleasure. Brian, always love the Doomies chat. Me too. I mean, I'm joking with you guys when I crap on you all. It is a fantastic chat. Renee, Kitty, Kennedy, oh, he's so beautiful. Theo, oh my God, I love him. Kennedy, I love him. Oh my God, he's so cute. The cat could probably fund the Patreon better than I can. Could probably get more people to fund the Patreon, I should say, than I can. So glad you got a new cat, dude. That's awesome. Good for you, says Theo. Yeah, I'm happy we got the cat. Like you guys know, we had a dog and a cat, and we lost them both in a very short amount of time. And it was really hard, actually. Well, hard on us. It was actually really hard on our 3-year-old. He has consistently, since we lost the dog in late August, has been mentioning them. And which is great. I think it's great that he thinks of them every day, and doesn't forget them. And they meant a lot to him, obviously. But we were worried that, you know, he would forget how it was to have a pet, being that they were around from the moment he was born. And we do want to get another dog eventually, but dog's a little too much work right now for us. And, cat was the easy way to go. Not replacements. Every one of our pets holds a special place in our heart. I'm getting emotional here. But we definitely needed another pet in the home to help facilitate certain things. They're part of the family, so it's helpful, especially for our 3-year-old, to have another pet. And being that this cat is so young, we got him right before Thanksgiving, and he's just a few weeks old. Well, not a few weeks, like 11 weeks old now, I think. But he's a kitten. Unlike our other cat, who is already 3 or 4 when Ezra, my 3-year-old, was born. This cat is more playful around him. Lets Ezra pick him up. So they're gonna have a good, hopefully, long relationship. See, letting you guys in on the personal life here. Theo, so glad you got a new cat, dude. That's awesome. Good for you. Thank you. LOL, we're too much, as Kennedy. Theo says, wow, Discord breach of confidentiality. Right. Doug on the roof says, can absolutely bully them into it, and it rules. Yes. Kennedy, PewDiePie promoted a channel that has a video essay using the gems in Steven Universe, which are an imperialistic alien race, as a stand-in for Jews. In the video, he refers to them as the parentheses gems. Oh, man. I should do an episode on PewDiePie specifically. I'd buy that for $1. First off, I love you. Second, do you think it's worth still debating right-winger YouTubers with large platforms talking about Crowder, Shapiro, Stefan Molyneux? Absolutely. And listen, like I said, I wasn't a complete dick to the Kent State gun girl because she was a nobody when I had her on. And, that's really all it was. And I invited her on as a guest, and she accepted. I mean, I did call her ignorant to her face. I wasn't, nice to her, but I wasn't just an outright, asshole. But, yeah, I will debate anyone, and I will go on any show. With a small footnote, I was recently asked to go on a show, and I think I mentioned this to you guys too, an alt-right show which literally used the word Goyism in the title of the show. Listen, I'm not going to go on any straight-up friggin' white supremacist, anti-Semitic shows. You want to call into this show, you want to come onto this show, I'm not going to let you spew your bullshit, but I'll debate you and say you're wrong and call you out in your shit and not give you the time of day to spew your bullshit. So no, that's where I draw the line, but I will debate any conservative, any right-winger, any far-righter who isn't just a straight-up literal Nazi. And even then, I think I'll let you guys call into the show. You're not going to come on as an invited guest, but I'll do the call-in shows, and you guys could come as a caller. I could have you on, and I could mute you when you spew your bullshit as a caller. But yeah, I will debate Shapiro. I will debate Crowder. I will debate Stefan Molyneux. Any of these guys can come on this show, or I will go on their show. I'll do it. Hell, Gavin McGinnis. I'll go on his show. Alex Jones. I'll go on his show. I'll go on while his other guy, Owen or whatever, is on. I'll go on there. Put me on with Roger Stone. They can come on this show too. I don't give a shit. Just don't call. I'm just not going to go on your show if it's the Holocaust never happened. That show I'm not going on. Palestinians are subhumans, the podcast. I'm not going on that show. But yeah, I'll debate 99.9% of these guys. And it has nothing to do with how much I think they'll school me. There's no fear in that. It's basically, is it worth debating someone who, thinks Jewish people are below human. No, I'm not gonna. Or thinks, you guys know what I'm saying here. There's a line here, and there's many ways actually where I'll allow you to cross that line. I'm basically saying I'm not going to go on your show if that's your show. Renee says, what was her reaction to being called ignorant? I mean, she took it, because what's she going to say about it? I said you're being ignorant here. Pretty sure it's about like the child labor laws and things like that. Theo says you're braver than the troops, mate. No, I'm not even saying that as like I'm brave or something. I'm just saying that as basically I'm really tired of all these people throwing out debate challenges on the right and just not accepting any of them because I don't know. They're afraid Sam Cedar's going to school them, or they're afraid Cenk is going to give them a hard time, or I don't know. Just listen. What's the fear here? If it's your fear is that someone's, and I remember when I debated Paul Elam, he didn't want to go on Majority Report's channel where I was working at the time because he thought we were going to like mute him when he's talking or cut him off or cut his mic. None of that shit's going to happen. I want you guys to talk. I went on his A Voice for Men, men's rights activist channel to ensure him that wouldn't happen. I gave them the ability to do that to me if they so wanted because I don't give a shit. I will go on any of those shows. You want to create a neutral party YouTube channel? Have one of your buddies moderate it or run the channel? I don't care. Anytime, anywhere. You want to come do it in person? Let's do it live at some bar. Do it live at some venue in New York, or you want to pay for my ticket to come down to you? Hell, if it's not more than like $100, I'll come to you too. We'll do it in a public venue. We'll sell tickets. You could fund my ticket that way, or we could fund your ticket that way. I don't care. Whoever you are. If you're considering yourself a progressive, but you don't believe in trans rights, you're a TERF, I'll debate you too. I'll debate anyone, anywhere. Jeez. Theo says this show rules. Theo says, wait, is there a Catreon? Renee says, well, there's already a feline political podcaster. Who? Renee says, afraid that Cenk might pile drive them? Right. Yeah, listen, I do not have a platform like Cenk or Sam. But, I mean, if that's all you care about, then I'll go on your show. And I could bring at the very least, a few dozen live listeners. And I will also bring thousands of people who will catch the replays. In fact, I'll probably bring more people to your channel and your podcast and your video replays than I bring to my own podcast and video, because my 30-something thousand Twitter followers are much more interested probably in seeing those type of debates than just watch me interview a fellow progressive, a fellow leftist. It's just the truth. Oh, I would debate Sargon of Akkad any day, Renee. Someone tell Sargon I'm in. If I remember he was obsessed with me. If he put out a call for debate then, when he was doing all those videos about me, I would have went on that show in a second. I'd buy that for $1. Says a lot of people think that Shapiro schooled Cenk at Politicon, and that wasn't the case at all. I think people just blindly follow Shapiro, to be honest. I don't care what his followers think. Listen, you will never get people to say, and maybe I'm giving away the game here, but this was my strategy with Paul Elam, and this is my strategy in general for debates. You're never going to convince the other side going in that you're right. They're not going to walk out leftists. But if you could plant the seed of doubt in the person, in the fans' minds of the person you're debating, where they may think, maybe Ben Shapiro isn't all that. Maybe Paul Elam doesn't really care about men's rights. Maybe he's not the best activist. Why doesn't he know about that issue? Maybe Stefan Molyneux is bullshitting us on this. Maybe Milo really is just a grifter. Why am I giving him this money? What is this bullshit he's doing? If you could just plant that seed in just a few people, you win the debate, man. That's what it's about. I don't give a shit. There's not a winner in a debate like that. You're going in with the wrong game plan if that's what you're hoping for. It's that simple. And if you could siphon off some people, even if they still believe they're conservatives, if you could siphon them off to listen to you so at least they consider the other side, it's a win-win right there. It's really simple. You don't have to be a master debater to pull it off either. Just going with a simple strategy. Know how the other person debates, know what they're going to tell, what they're going to say, know where they believe, and you go in just going with what you believe and knowing how to combat and retort what their game plan is. Boom, you got it. Brian Arguello, Sargon is a lightweight. Right, yeah, he's... Renee, tell more about the Sargon romance. That will have to be saved for another day. This is well over the usual amount of time, and I don't mind it at all. But I can't go totally into a whole story like that. And that really probably should be an episode of its own. All right, everyone. As my voice goes... Ooh, I got like a... Got some phlegm here in the back of my throat, guys. Been talking for over 2 hours. That is the show. Catch you all next time. I'm working on a number of really great guests, actually. It's been taking longer than I would like to get some of these people on. They're not the usual type of guests I have on this show. And I sort of want to keep it that way. I want to keep you guys guessing and have a real variety of people on this show. I'm actually, when I look at the list of people I've had on this show, I'm really proud of the variety of people on the variety of topics I've had. And I want to expand that even further. So that's what you guys could have. You should be expecting. You could see soon. Oh my God. Progressive atheist. You don't need to be a master debater, but you need to be a cunning linguist. Sean Zone says, thank you, Matt. Renee says, the Sargon who loved me. And, dog on the roof. Sargon's game plan is, oh my God, my voice is going. Sargon's game plan is, Venezuela. Guys, see you all next time on Doomed.